Dear students, please hold for a minute till we connect. Please be patient. Cordless mic, a lapel mic, whatever.
Cordless नहीं चाहिए.
Cordless ही चाहिए, lapel mic.
Yeah, that's better.
Lapel mic.
Lapel mic. Arjun, lapel mic.
एक बार cross check करना.
Just test this thing as well.
Hello. Good afternoon, dignitaries, faculties, and my dear budding architects. Delighted, excited, thrilled, and enchanted we are to even think that we all are going to witness and be part of the presentation by renowned personality, the architect of the Central Vista, architect Bimal Patel, sir. I welcome the keynote speaker of today's program, architect Dr. Bimal Patel, sir. We extend our warm welcome to the chief guest of the program, Professor Dr. Karunesh Kumar Shukla. He is the director of Manet, and he is the chief guest of the program. I also welcome the renowned architect and chairman of School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada, architect Amog Gupta, sir. And a very warm welcome to all the budding architects of the various architecture institutions of Bhopal, namely SPA Bhopal, Manet Bhopal, and RGPV Bhopal. And along with them, it's the faculty we welcome. मंगलम शुरुआत के लिए आइए हम सब मिलकर दीप प्रज्वलित करें तो दीप प्रज्वलन के लिए I request the keynote speaker of the program, architect Dr. Bimal Patel sir, the chief guest of the program, the director of Manet, Professor Director Karunesh Kumar Shukla sir, guest of honor of the program, architect Amog Gupta sir, and to accompany them, I request the IIA MP chapter chairperson, architect Vibha Srivastav, the center chairperson, chairman, architect Akshay Selukar, and the joint honorary secretary, MP chapter, architect Anish Pal Singh, to accompany them for the lamp lighting. I now request IIMP chapter chairperson, architect Vibha Srivastav, to accompany Dr. Bimal Patel sir and present a sapling to him. So it will be a photo opportunity also. Please be on stage. Yeah. Yeah, please. Yeah. Sir and madam, you can be over here only. Now I request IIA Bhopal Center Chairman, architect Akshay Selukar, to greet the chief guest, come along with him on stage and present a sapling to him. स्वागत की इस कड़ी में मैं अनुरोध करूंगा आर्किटेक्ट अनीश पाल सिंह सर to accompany Amog Gupta sir, and please come on stage and present a sapling to him too. Okay, thank you, dignitaries. Thanks a lot. Professor Dr. Karunesh Kumar Shukla, sir, the Director of MANET Bhopal is the chief guest of the program. Now I request Professor Dr. Karunesh Kumar Shukla, sir, to address the young and budding architects of SPA Bhopal, MANET and RGPV, please. Professor Karunesh Kumar Shukla, sir.
Namaskar. Architect Dr. Bimal Patel ji, who is the main speaker on this occasion, the function organized by the Indian Institute of Architects Bhopal chapter, other dignitaries on the dais, architect Amol Gupta ji, who is my elder brother, architect Srivastav, architects who are present in the hall, and the budding architects, or I can say my dear students, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to all of you. Indeed, it's my pleasure to be here in the galaxy of the architects. And that too, sharing the dais with architect Patel ji, whom at least I knew through the newspaper that he is the architect of the Central Vista, or that the new Parliament building, and the Biswanath Dham corridor. I have been to Biswanath Dham corridor, so I really salute you, sir, and it's my pleasure to sharing the dais with you. In other sense, I can say that also I am half of the architect, being a civil engineer. And on a lighter note, in India, in our country, everyone is civil engineer, architect, and doctor. At least these professions. If you talk any citizen, he will prescribe you some medicine. If you talk someone, he will give some guidance on the design of the buildings, or at least planning of the buildings. So everyone, every citizen of our country is an architect, is a civil engineer, and a doctor. But by profession and by being an Indian, then I can consider myself at more than 50% of the architect. Coming to this profession or the engineering, if I say, what we learned in civil engineering, I am a structural designer. My main area, though, later on I shifted to the mechanics side. I normally work in the area of the nonlinear mechanics, that to the stability and dynamics of the structures, and mostly on the computational sides. So nothing has to be done with the do away with the design and all those things, though at my earlier career I used to design some buildings as a consultancy, as a consultant, that's all. But if you see the structural design there, we say that we start by saying this word, that it's an art first. And when we talk that civil or structural engineering is an art, science, and then technology. It means it's the agglomeration of all the three. So when you start the art, there comes the role of the architect. Because if you have to design a project, then the idea has to be conceived. You have to visualize the whole thing which is going to exist after a certain period of time. So that's the beauty of the profession that we call the architects. It's really something imagination. Or I can say, in other words, it's some sort of reverse engineering. That I want to construct a building or any monuments, so I have to see before constructing, in my mind, every idea has to be very clear. And on a lighter note, when I was studying BTech in civil engineering, then we have to study engineering graphics and then the machine drawing. At this stage, when I am the director of the institute, I believe that some of the students of MANET are also sitting, and other from SPA, Bhopal, and RGP. I don't have any hesitation in confessing that the line projection, the projection of the lines, and that to the third angle, still I am not able to understand completely. And that was the one topic that haunted me for long. In my the BTech 4 years degree, and other thing which I felt that it is something difficult is in the machine drawing, that's the assembly of the things. So in that sense, I really appreciate the role of the architects, because you are the one who have to provide or who have to visualize what we want. And in the modern era, the role of the architects has taken great role, or it has assumed greater significance. The reason is that the land is squeezing and the population is increasing. Then we have to provide shelter to each and everyone, and that to the rapidly squeezing land. So here we have to plan how we can beautifully or efficiently plan that where on a limited plinth area we can house many more. I was discussing with a person, sir, you will appreciate it. His concept was that can we have the hanging houses, particularly at the chaurahas in the cities. You might have seen the hanging restaurant at Kolkata. So the concept was using certain newer materials, particularly he was talking of the ferrocement materials. Can we construct hanging houses for those peoples who are spending their night at streets? The concept was very beautiful, that you have a pillar in between the chauraha, and you can design a house and you can put a spiral staircase. So some sort of concept people are coming with this one. Another challenge for the architects, though I believe that there is always a conflict between the structural designer and the architects. Architect will give some shape where the structural designer will find to design it. Difficult to design. I tell you my case when I was young. I got a building to design at Amethi, Uttar Pradesh. There was a girls' polytechnic being constructed. The architect, they have put a porch, no columns, and the span of the chord beam he put, that was around something 40 feet. And he came to the, I'm faculty, regular faculty at NIT Allahabad, to ask someone to design. So people say, no, I have to put the column. The condition was that you need not to put the column. Then I designed that, and then I came to know, though it was not taught to us, beam chord in plan, that apart from flexure, it will come, torsion will also come there. So that was my learning exercise, I designed it. So I also realized why the architect has designed like this one, put this one. It was very simple to put two columns. The design would have been much easier. So is the case in some of the architectural concepts or design, a structural designer do not agree with it, or there is a conflict. But nonetheless, now we have to work hand in hand. The reason is that we are bound to go for the energy efficient building. Or we can say while conceiving a project or something, we have to, while planning any project or building, whatever you call, we have to consider in mind the life cycle energy analysis of the building, because by any means our Prime Minister has also said that by 2047 or 2070 we have to go for the zero carbon emission, and by 2030 we have to reduce it by to 50 or 60%. So if you consider, suppose this building or this all you consider, while planning I request, because I'm here standing before the galaxy of the architects and the future architects, that can you plan a building which does require, or net energy requirement is zero. When we talk in terms of the life cycle energies of any project, then the components are, one is the embodied energy, that is the energy utilized by producing a particular material. You are using a steel, it's a high energy intensive material. cement, again a high intensity energy materials, bricks, somewhat energy embodied is there, embodied energy is there, so is the aggregates and all those things. Can we think of certain materials where the embodied energy is minimal? Then comes the operational energy. Of course, we have to utilize that building. Then we have to make the ambient temperature. I am critic of those buildings where during daytime we have to put the lights. Or during normal days we have to on the ACs. Because I wish that we should utilize the AC to the minimum. We are putting some carbon load to the atmosphere. So operational energy can be minimized by the judicious use of certain materials. Now people are working on it, be it windows, be it walls, be it the roof. Then comes the maintenance energy, because every building, every structure needs to be maintained. And while maintaining it, again, some amount of energy is involved. Can we minimize it? And of course, it has to die someday. Once it has lived its life or it has served its intended purpose, then it has to be demolished. So can we use certain materials, those materials while constructing the building, or the planning should be such that where the demolition energy is minimum. So summing up the embodied energy, construction energy, operational energy, maintenance energy, and the demolition energy, can we come to net zero? That's a challenge. Because the energy which we are utilizing today is mostly based on the fossil fuels. And that is depleting day by day. That's why our government has also focused on the solar energy or the other form of the renewable energy. So this should be a challenge. Another aspect has come into existence is of late the Vastu Shastra. And if you talk to the Vastu Shastra, then people will correlate it with the religion. But I personally feel, being a civil engineer, that it has certain science. So can the architects correlate the Vastu Shastra with the science so that the people can accept it? So these are some thoughts which I thought that I will share with you, though it's a challenging job. And I feel that the Indian Institute of Architects is doing great service to the nation. And particularly, I am very much pleased to see that our young architects, who are the future architects or future of the nation, they are sitting over here, and they will be listening to their peers. And I appreciate and congratulate the Bhopal chapter of IIA, that I came to know while I was talking to Sri Architect Gupta ji, that he had organized in past several events and is even planning to organize many more events like that. So it will be a lifetime opportunity to listen to a personality like Bimal Patel ji, and you will learn, you will know the nitty-gritty of your profession. I request all the students who are sitting over in the hall, while Architect Patel will be giving his talk, it should not be a one-way flow. Please interact with him, raise queries, ask the questions. I believe that he will not mind it, so that you are encouraged. And later on, I can see many more Bimal Patels from this audience. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I wish the very best for the Indian Institute of Architects, particularly to Bhopal chapter. With this, I end my speech. आप सभी का कल्याण हो, शुभम भवतु.
So true it is that an architect should be perfect in every idea. And it has been very beautifully summed up in our logo, the SP Bhopal logo, where it states that Sthapatiya Sthapanarya Sarva Shastra Visharada. और इसका मतलब यह है कि an architect should be perfect in every field. He should have the knowledge of each and every field. So the moment has arrived which we all are desperately waiting for. Yes, it is the presentation by the renowned and famous architect, Dr. Bimal Patel, sir. But before I hand over the stage for presentation to architect Dr. Bimal Patel, sir, I take this opportunity to introduce the keynote speaker, although he doesn't require any introduction. But yeah, I request the dignitaries to please take the seats. And I'll just go through the brief introduction of architect Dr. Bimal Patel, sir. Okay, sir, as you say, sir. Okay, sir, as you say, sir. Yeah. Meanwhile, when you're, shall I read this?
No.
Okay. Okay.
These lights, we can switch these off.
Yeah.
Coming in.
Of course, no introduction required, but I request that if you have questions, we'll be circulating a tray, and in that tray, kindly write your question and please put it in that tray. And simultaneously, I request to kindly switch off your mobile phones or keep it on silent mode, please. Sir, please. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me on this mic? I don't need to. Okay. You can switch that off. That's quite loud. Can you make it little? Is that too loud? I speak loudly afterwards, so thoda kam karo na. I'll speak loudly, don't worry. Thoda kam kar do. So thank you very much for inviting me, all the office bearers of IIA, and especially Amokji. If it had not been for his persistence and insistence, I would not have made my way here. So thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you all for coming to listen to me. I just need to know who I'm speaking with. Everybody is front row, no, I mean the back, everybody is students of architecture? Yeah, my God, don't say sir. And you are, what year are you in? Only third? Final year also. So there is a mix of students here. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so everybody. So listen, I'm going to make two presentations if we have the time. Otherwise, we'll stop at one. I do agree with what, please ask questions. But perhaps what we can do is I'll run through the presentation first, the first one, and then after that. But please do ask questions because that's the whole point. Otherwise, it's no fun. I head a firm called HCP. It's a large firm. It grew large over the years as we were doing more and more large projects, not for being large, but because large projects require large firms. And so the work I'm going to show you is the work of a large team of people. It's not my work alone. You must remember that architecture is a collaborative art. I have the privilege of presenting it to you, but it's the work of a lot of people. It's not just my work. So please keep that in mind. Our office has two studios. One we call the architecture studio, where essentially we design buildings and building complexes. And we have an urbanism studio where we do urban design and urban planning. So my first presentation is an architecture project. We do quite a lot of different projects, but I'm going to show you the Kashi Vishwanath project, which is finished since a long time, but it's an interesting one. That's an architecture project. And then I'm going to show you, if time permits, something that we have done in urbanism, but it's not a project, it's research and some policy changes that we are trying to get done in some of our planning work. So let me start with the architecture presentation. Is that, okay. Point. Okay. So the first the architecture one, right? And oops, I got to point backwards like that. Vishwanath Dham is what I'm going to talk about. So unfortunately, the slides are a bit distorted. I wish that we could correct that. For the second presentation, I hope we will correct it, that distortion. Okay. Here, this is Varanasi. As you can see, that's the Ganges. You can see, it's not very clear, but this is the city around. This is Banaras Hindu University, and you can see the Ganges flowing here. It flows up towards that side. Whoops. Okay, so here's a closer view. I'm going to talk about the Mandir precinct. You know, this has got distorted really badly. Can we get this back? Just hold on for a second. If we can get this correct, it will be much better. Yeah. If somebody in the audience knows how to fix this, the students often know much better than. Yeah, we'll do that. Yes. There's somebody there who can fix it, I think. Okay, we're going to have to make do with this. There's a slight distortion, but when you're all thinking about it, please squeeze a little bit. So, and then it'll be perfect. So here we are. That yellow rectangle is what I'm going to talk about. If you go here, this is the Kashi Vishwanath Mandir precinct. You can see here that the Kashi Vishwanath Mandir is right here, and that is the mosque. There you see the Ganga. In the entire stretch between here, it's about 400 meters from the temple to the river. That entire stretch is full of dense urban settlement. Okay? Now, this dense urban settlement, whenever people had to visit the mandir, they would come either from that street which you see on top, or they would come from these gullies which you can see. If they came by the river, they would come up on these small gullies coming all the way up. So this is a dense walled city type of a settlement. Here is a image, same thing. You can see the mosque, you can see the Gyanvapi Masjid there, you can see the Kashi Vishwanath Mandir down here. Fortunately, I won't be able to point out to things here. And far there is the Manikarnika Ghat, which is the cremation ghat, which all of you know about. So these are the landmarks here. This is a view, same view. You can see the masjid on the left hand side here. You can see the Ganges here, and that's the dense settlement that was there. Lots of people visit this mandir, as you all know, but in this dense settlement, dense area, it's more or less impossible for people, large numbers of people to move easily. Here is another very important fact about this area. From the Ganges, you have to climb up almost 100 feet, right? And then you have to drop down 20 feet, and that's where the mandir is. So this is a climb up all the way, okay? The mandir was never supposed to be connected to the river because you can see it's on the other side of the hill. It's not on this side of the hill. However, there was a great desire to connect the mandir with the river. So this was the starting point of the project. Here you can see that's the masjid, the Gyanvapi well, and the Kashi Vishwanath Mandir you can see here. Now if you look at the precinct all around, which is what is important, it's like this. It's dense agglomeration of buildings, and not all of these are old. Many of these are new additions to older buildings, and the whole place has got filled up with all sorts of buildings here. They are very narrow lanes, you can see. It makes it very difficult for people to move. They are very crowded lanes, especially on festival days, it would get totally crowded. There are lots of priests there, priests everywhere, okay? And there are some high priests and some low priests and priests in the whole place. There are also some itinerant sadhus who are moving through the place. So there's lots of religious people there. Lots of pilgrims come there. Okay? And you know very well that this is a large, especially on special festivals, there'll be lots of people here. There's lots of tourists also who come here. Okay? That's attraction for them. And then there is the mandir, which is the most important aspect of that precinct. And in that area, this must have been the original magnet. You must remember, however, that most of the people living there are not the original residents of that area. Okay? Only those who are connected with the temple economy are living there. Most of the original owners have long gone away from the old city because there is very little infrastructure there, and there is really, it's very difficult to live there. So most of the people who are living there are tenants, or they are encroachers in buildings. Okay? So this is the character of the people living there. Then of course there is the mosque, which has been barricaded in this very ugly manner after the Supreme Court ruling. There are policemen everywhere. There is large requirement for security. So this is like, I don't know, there's thousands of policemen in this area. Okay. So what was done to start with was that a 8.2 hectare area, it's not very large, it's just 82,000 meters square, right? And this area was carved out as a special development authority. Okay. So that now a master plan can be prepared for this area, and the municipal corporation, etc., and other planning authorities are not involved in this. This is directly the authority in that area. So that was the legal way of working on this. And then when we first saw it, we first started working on the master plan. So this was the original sort of condition in which we found the area. Okay, that's the precinct, and we made a quick 3D model, 3D printed model of this to understand the area. You can see that that down below is the river, and this whole texture, you can see the mosque there, and this was the main objective here. Of course, one starts working on sketches and drawings, and I just want to say something about the design process at this point. The design process is about coming up with some proposal, then seeing how many faults it has, and then coming up with the second proposal, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. This idea that architects sit and imagine a place is not true. Real architects actually go through this process, an iterative process of coming up with proposal after proposal, criticizing that proposal to find the mistakes in it, and then finally the proposal that you can find no further mistakes with, at least at that point, then you decide to agree on. So the process is very important. In our office, we work like that. You know, somebody will draw up a sketch like this. It could be anybody. Then everybody stands around in a circle, and everybody is criticizing it, criticizing by, I don't mean it in a negative fashion, but trying to find the faults in it, saying this is wrong, that won't work, this won't work. And then somebody has to come up with the next proposal. That's a creative sort of portion, then which has answered some of those faults. Now there will be other faults that have crept in because of answering those, and you keep going through that process. So, you know, we go through many. Our idea was that we wanted to connect from the river to this place, so create a whole pathway up. And so many such sketches were drawn. And finally, we came up with this version, which we'll call version 0, which we said in this basic idea was that the mosque was there. Here we have, around the temple, we have created an arcade and a civic plaza in front of it, and then pathway leading all the way down. And then we produced a model of it, of this sort, and that's what it looked like. And this is what we got going on it. But even then, this was our first master plan. Now, other people who are involved in this project, the clients, have to get involved. When they get involved, there's lots of new discussion. So you have to go through a process again. Another thing that happened was when we started demolishing some of the buildings there, we found that many of the buildings had been built on top of temples. So many new temples in that area became visible and opened up. So now our design had to incorporate these new temples also. So there were temples, you can see one here like that, where a concrete slab has been made. So there were temples like this sticking out of terrace. Now when the building is broken, you get a new temple. So a lot of old temples were found. And by the way, these are pretty modern additions done by people in the area. These are not done by some ancient ruler. These are all, you know, this is regular people who have done these sort of thing. So don't get the wrong idea. There were all these temples there, which we discovered. So then the master plan had to change, and we came up with a version 1. And then we started working with the team of people. There was a wonderful set of people from the Temple Trust and the commissioner there, one Mr. Deepak Agarwal, one Mr. Vishal Sinha. They were terrific people. And we started evolving the master. You can see that we had this, then again come up with the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Every time we are changing something. Now, this is something important to keep in mind. An architect's design process is this iterative process of keeping on coming up with new and new proposals. You don't wait till the last day. And by the way, this whole idea that you analyze everything and then finally come up with a proposal is also completely wrong. That's complete nonsense. Nobody works like that. You start designing on day one. That tells you what data you have to find and what analysis you have to do. As soon as you found that data and that analysis is done, you come up with a second design. That tells you what more data you have to find, what analysis. So this idea that you will do a detailed study and a detailed analysis and then finally come up with a design at the end of the semester is completely nonsense. You have to start designing on day one. Okay? With a Google image, you start. Say, let me just check. That will tell you what more data to look for. Okay? So this classic idea that you go step by step, completely nonsense. Anyway, so here this is version 5 and version 6 and version 7. Now you can see a big jump from here to here, and then then we made some large models like this, constantly trying to figure out. This was an old building that was existing here. It's not really a building. There's no building here, actually just a terrace overlooking the place. We were going to use that terrace. At one point we decided that suppose we get rid of that, what we can do here. So we got rid of that building. You can see it near the ghat here. You can see it's right near the river. So here, you will see more of this in detail afterwards, but just telling you that this is how the master plan evolved. You can see here we removed that. Then we made a new model saying that, the pathway coming down could be much nicer, could be nicer and wider. So you can see here, it's very tortured. You go from here and past here into this place. That's not going to work. So you say, how about doing it like this, that we have a grand set of steps going up. Then this was removed, and we said, oh no, we could do even better than that. So this was the final version that actually got built. So there was a long process of design evolution. And this was the final master plan, what's built right now. Some of these versions of the master plan also happened while the construction was going on. But that's the way it is. And this is the sort of a plan drawing of the whole thing. Here's another view of it. This is what it used to be like, and this is what has been proposed in its place. You can see here that this is a dense agglomeration of buildings. You can see near the river here, and this is what has been proposed. Here the temple is in here, right next to the mosque. You can see that, and you can see that, this is where it is. Okay? That's another model we made of this, just to sort of get a sense of what was being done here. And that's the same model. And now let me explain the design to you in a little more detail. Okay? So first is the Mandir Parisar. So this is the area I'm talking about. So as you can see, there was this temple, and it is hemmed in on all sides by encroachment and development. There's hardly any space there. And lots of people come here. So we decided that, like many South Indian temples and many other temples, we have a tradition of building an arcade all around and creating a sacred space around it. So we took that parisar here, and you can see here in more detail what it was like. This is what was the temple precinct at that time, small one. And we said that's the axis. We take this square here. We straightened out those two squares. Now this is distorted, so you have to, in your mind, you have to squeeze it down. We added this so that we could take in the well that is there, and then we built a 75 meter by 42 meter arcade around it. And it has 4 gates, as you can see, and that was basically an arcade and gates all around. While we designed the entire sort of the morphology or the shape or size of this and the whole concept, this we decided to make in a very traditional vocabulary. And a traditional temple vocabulary is not something that anybody in my office understands. So we requested a temple architect to help us with it. So he joined the team, he sat in our office and figured out what exactly will be the decoration. Because for me to draw something like that is impossible. I don't know how to draw it. It's a specialist job. And so this is the temple at the back, and that's the front elevation of it. And we would sit together and we would tell him what proportions we wanted, how we wanted the gate to be, etc. And together we worked out what that would be. You can see here the key plan below. So that's the temple inside, and this is the parisar around it. You can see that's now the temple was opened up, and we have a space around it. And you can see here, that's the temple in there, that's the arcade all around. You can see some views. Lots of people come here, there's lots of queuing up, has a marble floor, and at night when you see it, that's when you walk out of it, that's the view you see of that. Here's another view of that same. It's all lit up at night, and yet another view. Outside the temple, sacred space, we decided to create a civic space. Okay? So that's the space that we're talking about. That's where people wait. You remember that 20-foot drop that we talked about? So you're coming from the river, then you can see the steps here in between. So that's what it's about. So we took that and we just repeated it on the other side, put it there, and made a building around it that forms the negative space. Now here, because you're students, let me say this, the space between buildings is more important than the building itself, because as soon as you place 2 or 3 buildings together, you have a possibility of shaping the space between them. And very often we forget that it's that negative space which has to be designed. And that's the building here, you can see, and the ground floor, and that's the first floor of it, and that's the top floor of it. And you can see a section through here. You can see it stepping down, you can see the Mandir Parisar on the left-hand side here. Okay, you come down here. We decided to make this building fairly modern, but with some features of it that had a connection with the traditional architecture. And you can see this is the plaza in front. This is the civic space in front. And you can see that drop coming down. This is during construction, so those sculptures are still not opened up. And so that's the space. All those cables you see on top is the lighting that we did. We didn't want to put poles from below, so we just hung cables across. Okay. And that's the space seen from top. And this is, you can see this is still construction is going on, and people are emptying out this place. Here's another view of it. Here's the space. So it's a grand space in front of the temple that gives you. And the gate that you see is where, if you came from the river, that's where you would come from. Okay? And here you can see it lit up at night. Now the approaches to this temple. I told you earlier there's a road on top which is only 40 feet wide. So if you came by car, very difficult because there's lots of traffic on that street, you would come from gate number 1. Okay? If you came from the various gullies from inside the city, you would come from 2, 4, 5. And if you came from the river, you would come from gate number 3. Okay? So these are the approaches into the place. There's a vehicular entry from gate number 1. So we needed to create some access for emergency vehicles also. Okay, so that is so originally it used to be like this. This was that 40-foot road, and behind this police choki is the temple. This is what it used to be like. And that has been changed. This is the pathway from here, and you can see that the access is all lined up so that the temple and the gateway is all in line. So when you come through that gate, straight on what you see is so these were some early views of the same thing, that you would walk through this gateway and you would see the temple at the back. And that's the temple here. On that tall opening you see on the right-hand side is the opening from the gully into the So if you came from the city, you would come from there. And here you can see the gateway. You can see right through at the back here. Now, the important thing was to structure this whole route from the Ganges. If you came by boat and you came here, you went through these gullies. This was not a pleasant experience at all because these gullies had no infrastructure, they were crowded, this was messy, it was quite dirty. Okay? And this is where you arrived actually, originally. You can see this was, on the left-hand side, you see the sewage pumping station. Behind it is a beautiful structure that was originally built by Ahilyabai, not Ahilyabai, but during that period. Then you can see this other structure. You can see the encroachments on top, all those buildings that have been built on top of the heritage structure. On the right-hand side, you see the Manikarnika Ghat. And essentially, you got down here and went up that Nilkant Gully, all that little gateway, and then you went into the gullies and you went in. Now, that was an experience, but it was not okay for large numbers of people to do that. And you came by boat. Even the boats where they parked getting off was quite dangerous. So for older people, this was not a very easy thing to do. So this was what it looked like before. As I told you, here you can see the sewage treatment, sewage pumping station. You can see the older structure here, encroachments on top. This was the gully that you went through, okay, essentially. So a lot of surgery was required, but this is what we proposed in its place. Okay. We said we'd remove the sewage pumping station, open up the building at the back, restore that building quite well. Here in front you can see, create a ghat that leads you up. This structure here is meant to give some privacy to the Manikarnika Ghat, and then you go up all the way. And as I told you, this is a whole pathway going all the way up, and this is one of the early sketches from that time. And here is the gate being built towards the, and this is the path that leads you up to the place. This is the ghat being built here. Okay. These buildings along the route were cultural and civic institutions. So there's a hospice. People come here when they are terminally ill, and so that's the last days they want to spend, they spend here. There was a small museum space, a spiritual gallery, a multi-purpose hall, a variety of functions were to be housed here. You can see that section going all the way up. There were lots of facilities for pilgrims and tourists that you can see here. Essentially, when people come, they need a place to keep their shoes and bags and mobile phones, etc. So, number of Suvidha Kendras had to be created, a guest house had to be made, a tourist facilitation center, whole number of things had to be put in. And you can see that the whole idea is to place these buildings in such a way that you create a path that leads you up to this area. And these were all the buildings that were done. There were some administration facilities, the temple trust offices, security, lots of security here, so security offices, etc. And finally, the ghats. So you can see the ghat here, that's Manikarnika, there's Lalita Ghat there. Okay, you come nearby. Originally, the Manikarnika Ghat was nothing but a dirty bed of the river, which we created into platforms, and then this large ghat. This used to be the structure in olden times. And later on, there was this pumping station built there. So we had to build a new pumping station and move this pumping station to that area. You can see that structure, the encroachments were removed, that structure was moved. You can see this is what it looked like. So very ugly additions over a period of time. Now our ambition was to turn it from that into this, you know, that we would have, you can see here the Manikarnika Ghat there on the right hand side, and so instead open up the place, create a big plaza in front, sort of steps leading up to this place. That structure that you see sticking out actually has a ramp, a wheelchair ramp inside it. So this was the idea. And we thought that once it's done like that, it would look quite grand. This would become the entrance of the temple, because the temple cannot be seen from the, nor can you see the river from the temple. So this would be the announcement of the temple on, okay. So this is, as you can see, during the construction of this ghat, quite a massive effort here to put all of this together. And finally, that's what got built. Here you can see people climbing up, and it's a huge achievement here. And it's when it's lit up. Yeah. So, thank you. So here it is. You can see those. You know, when it actually during the monsoon, the Ganges, the level of the Ganges goes up. You can see the steps are all flooded. You can see so much of it has got submerged. The boats all come to a higher level. So all of this is below water at one point, and you can see here, you can come directly to this level by boat if you, at that time. Now, of course, this was an intensely political project, very difficult project in some ways. As you can see, this was, propelled by the Prime Minister, and you can see here. So, and he put his whole force behind this project. And of course, there were many, many reactions to this. And you had, a lot of people were very upset. They were wondering whether this project is going to completely transform Varanasi, is going to change the character of Varanasi. And so there was, all sorts of. Now, in India, we are very, very poor at putting information about projects out into the public domain. And that is what often generates a lot of the negative discourse. Of course, projects like this are bound to have some opposition and some, but any case, and so we kept doing surveys of people in the area to find out what they were saying. There were people who were clearly upset by the area. Some didn't want to leave, some wanted to leave. Here you have, Vishal Singh, he's the CEO, the person who first got the project going. By the way, he's the guy who then later on did the Ayodhya work. And you can see here various people talking about it. So we made our own attempts to explain the project, but it was a lot more difficult. I mean, in all our public projects, we make our own effort to try and put material out. So through brochures like this, through exhibitions, through films, we even made a comic book like this, which sort of explained the project. And you can see here, explaining what the problem is, and this young man who goes to see Kashi and he finds all of this mess, and then he goes to the other side, he takes a dip, comes out, and the whole thing has changed suddenly. So something of that sort was done. This was also kind of fun to see it. Here's some idea of how difficult the construction was. You can imagine there is no access to this site except from the river. So that's the only place you can get material in large amount. Trucks can come into this 40-foot road at night, so a little bit of material could be brought from the city, but most of it in March 2018. There's a company called PSP Projects, which is a contractor from Gujarat who took up this challenge. It's really, without a great contractor, this project cannot get done. So here you can see first the houses here in this area had to be purchased. This was all done by the temple trust and people. They purchased 300 houses. As I told you, most of the houses were absentee landlords. They were very happy to sell the house to government with the tenant. The tenants were given a lot of money and a compensation, and or an alternative accommodation if they wanted. Almost everybody wanted money. Now, not everybody is going to be pleased with this move, but vast majority of people were quite happy to take the money and get out of here and get something better. So almost 400 crores was spent over 300 houses. So that's a lot of money per house, you can see. There were still some people who really would not want to move because they were tied to the temple economy, but that is the nature of such developments. So you can see January 2019, more demolition, the site being created. Here's March 2019, okay, as the more demolition. Now the construction has started October 2020. You can see March 2021, construction ongoing. This was quite a massive, incredible site. September 2021, You can see October 2021, you can see it is still getting constructed, nearing. Here's December 2021, and there you are, finally, this got done. Okay. The Ghat was built afterwards, after the inauguration of the temple. You can see some more images of it. Okay. Here's some more images and more. It's a project of much significance for Varanasi. It's a very, very significant project, but at another level in Varanasi, it's actually a very small thing that you're doing. And to get a sense of it, you see this is what it was, this is what it became. Now if you look at this is in that whole settlement, this is just about 80,000 square meter area. If you zoom up, this is what you see. If you zoom up, if you go zoom up, it's actually almost invisible in all of Varanasi. You can see that it's here. Okay, so that's one project. If you have questions. So can we do the questions of this project first? Maybe that's better, and then. Okay, they want me to do both presentations, so I'll do both presentations and then we. Okay, this one is work that gets done in our urbanism studio, and this is some food for thought for all of you, and especially for the architects, practicing people who are here. Okay, I'm going to talk about the waste of land in Indian cities. You probably haven't thought about this, but Indian cities are terrific in the amount of land we waste. What do I mean by this? Okay, we start. My proposition that is the following, that Indian towns and cities waste a lot of land. Now let's take Ahmedabad. That's a view of Ahmedabad. You can see the riverfront on the left-hand side. You can see Charles Correa Stadium here. You can see the metro line in the middle. So it's a bang in the middle of the city we are talking about. So you can see in the map of Ahmedabad there, that red spot, that's the area I'm talking about. That's in the middle of Ahmedabad. Okay? And if you were to take 1 square kilometer here, that's you can see that shape there, that's here. If you take 1 square kilometer in the middle of Ahmedabad, then you ask the simple question, how is the land used in this area? Okay? When you ask a planner, they'll give you all these things about residential, commercial, this, that, all. That's complete nonsense. Throw it out of the window. You should not even bother with that. Planners shouldn't be doing it. We shouldn't be doing it. If you want to ask land use, you must divide the land use into 3 categories. Okay? The first category of land use is the public realm. So ask a simple question, how much of land is in the public realm? By public realm, I mean streets and parks, right? Streets and parks, that's publicly accessible, that's the public realm. In any city, streets and parks. Now you would all want more streets and more parks, because that's where we spend a lot of time in parks and we spend a lot of time in, if you have more streets, then your traffic will move better. Now I saw that Bhopal does not have that much of a traffic issue, but as you grow and as you get more vehicles, it will become more and more important for you to have streets, enough land in streets. Now in Ahmedabad, in this 1 square kilometer, there's no parks, and if you look at the public right of way, 20% of land is used in streets. Now I don't think this number will change much across any city in India. Anywhere you go in India, they'll tell you 18, 19, 20% of land is in streets, and parks, they might say 2, 3, 4%, most cities. Okay? So we put 20%, and important thing to keep in mind is that this is the quantity that you want to maximize, because the more land there is in streets and parks, the better the city will be. So we want to maximize this category. You want to know how much there is. In the case of Ahmedabad here, you have 20%. Okay? The second category is how much building cover you have. By building cover, I mean how much land has been covered up by buildings, footprint of the building. Okay? Why is this important? It's important for 2 or 3 reasons. One, it tells you how much ground floor space there is in the city, right? Very immediately, the amount of footprint, building cover, is the amount of ground floor space. Now, ground floor space is something that all of us value highly, right? We want to use it. Why? Because it has a special relationship to the ground, and unlike any other floor, this is the most important floor space. And that is why its price is almost always high, right? So you want to find out whatever people want a lot of, you should try and maximize. So building cover is something you should maximize just because it's something that people really want. In the case of Ahmedabad, the building cover here is 26%. Another reason why you want more building cover is that the more ground floor space you have, the more floor space you are able to stack up in 1 square kilometer without going too tall. And going too tall is costly. Okay? Going too tall is also environmentally sort of costlier, in the sense that you will have to cool the buildings a lot more. So if you're below the treetops, if you say I want to be only 5 floors, and you have more floor space on the ground, then in 5 floors you'll stack up more, right? In a city, people don't want land, they want floor space, because that's the important thing. And you want to maximize the amount of floor space in a city. The more you put into 1 square kilometer, the less you will have to spread the city out. So if you want compact cities, you also want to have more building cover. Now, you know, when you go to a forest, people say, oh, this is forest land. Then the next question is, oh, but really, how much is the forest cover? Right? Well, when you go to a city, you must ask a simple question. You must ask, I've already asked a question of how much there is in parks and on streets. You have trees on parks and streets. Next question you must ask, how much is your building cover? It might be a city, but you might have not much building cover. So here you are, you have 26% of land in Ahmedabad in building cover. So what happens to the remaining 53%? That's over half the land. Over half the land is a very familiar Indian phenomenon. It's the land around buildings inside compound walls. Land around buildings inside compound walls. Most of it left like that because bylaws require you to leave it open. You cannot use it, otherwise people will cover it up with buildings. Okay? So this land is over 1/2. It can be used by the private landowner. It's not publicly accessible, so public doesn't benefit from it. The private fellow benefits, but does he really? It's open wall within open land within compounds, regulations required. Much of it is very narrow, much of it is not properly shaped, because you cannot shape land properly like this. It can only be used very poorly. And that is what I call the waste of Indian cities. So this is land that's open, it's cut up into small pieces, fragmented, and it is over half our land, cannot be used very well. So you see, if you look at a view like that, that's the shape of all of that land is this. And most of it, when it is used, it's used in this manner. Between 2 buildings, people try to use it in some way, but they can't really use it. They use it for some storage. You can hardly grow any trees here. So who this is useful for is a question you keep asking. You know, the front space, front margin like this, neither belonging to the road nor belonging to the building, you can't really use it well. You make some steps, landscape people do something. It doesn't really work. Little patches of land in which cars get parked. This is all fragmented land, and it amounts to more than half. That's the story in Bombay also. In Bombay also, you find same sort of thing. Here you have Nariman Point. This is the most expensive real estate in the world, most expensive land. Everybody wants to be here. These streets were made during British times, so the streets use up a little more land, 29, but building footprint 29. and the rest of it is 41%. Okay, so not exactly half, but nearing half. And this is what the area looks like. In Juhu, Mumbai, Juhu, you took 1 square kilometer. Juhu is also like the most important part of the city, and and you can see the streets are only 13%, and some of the tallest buildings are here. And 13%, 25% in building cover. Private open space is 62, and this is all, you can see all that fragmented land there, not much use. If you take Pune, 1 square kilometer in Pune, here you are, 13% in streets, 30% in building footprints, and 57% in all this space all around. Think about it. How much land is suboptimally used? If you take Jabalpur, you get the same story in Jabalpur. You get 21% in streets, 30% in building cover, and 50%, 49% in all this. So it is fair to say that in Indian cities, land use is as follows. Don't ever bother with those residential, commercial. That is a traditional junk which has been coming down, and you might as well get rid of it. 20-25% in public realm, 20-25% in building footprint, and 50-60%. This is what you have. Now, well-functioning cities abroad are very different. And you see New York here, it's a very dense city, and here you have 1 square kilometer in New York. Guess what? It has 45% in streets and parks. Twice, more than twice what we have. It has 46% in building cover and only 8% in all this residual open space. They use land very, very efficiently. Okay? San Francisco, it's got nothing to do with high rise or low rise. If you were to take in the sort of in-between area, here between high rise and low rise, 35% in streets and parks, 55% in building cover, and 9% in all this space between buildings. Okay? If you take Hong Kong, well, Hong Kong has the same sort of story, 35%, 48% in building cover, 16%. And this is hilly terrain, that is why it's 16, otherwise it would be less. This is a lovely low-rise city. You can see in this entire low-rise city, you have 39-40% in streets and parks. Building footprint has 40%, 19% in open spaces, and all those open spaces are also well-shaped. You can see they're all in the middle of blocks, larger spaces. Huh? It's got nothing to do with rich or poor. This is Mexico. Okay? Very, very poor neighborhood here. You can see it looks like this. It's ground plus 2, but very efficiently packing 26% in streets, 69% in building footprints, and only 4.8% left over. If you pack it, if at the current rate, we use land at the current rate, our cities will expand a lot more. If we were to use it more efficiently, they won't expand. Okay? So Bhopal will start cutting out its forests much faster if it has this pattern of land use. So we can say that in well-functioning cities, 35-40% in the park. No wonder their streets and parks seem very nice. How many of you have been abroad? Quite a few of you have. Okay. So when you go to cities abroad, you might even have seen them on film. There's great streets. There's great. What causes the waste of land? Indian planning. You have building bylaws. Yeah. Building bylaws. These are Gujarat building bylaws. And architects are required to design according to these rules, and these rules require you to leave land open inside your plot for a variety of reasons. Here you have, you have from plot boundaries, you're supposed to leave setbacks. Sometimes they depend on the height of the building, sometimes they depend on the width of the street. You ask me why. And if you can answer why this is true, why this makes any sense, award for you. But they require all sorts of margins. Setbacks from other buildings. If you have your large plot and you have two buildings, they'll say, no, you must put 12 meters between them. Then, if there's a nala passing by, they'll say, no, 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 we got to leave space from the nala or from the river. Then, inside the plot, if you have a road, they will tell you how much road to leave, as if you will deliberately not leave a road that is needed by you. Then they will require you to put some common open space. That, see, what planners should worry about and what government should worry about is public space, not what you do inside your plot. Okay? Inside your plot, you may leave open space, you may not leave open space, but you must have more land. Okay. Setback from common open space, greenery. Sometimes bylaws require you to leave some space open for greenery. Come along, man, just make parks instead of doing this. Okay? Parking, fire tender movement, this is another funny one, you know, because you leave all this space, it almost always is full of parking, and then there's no way a fire tender will ever be able to move. And clearance from trunk infrastructure, that's another reason. Now, sometimes, as if this were not enough, even the coverage is restricted, and we take great pride in saying that there is very little coverage. Okay? Now, how do these play out on a plot? This is the case of Ahmedabad, okay? And here is a house that we designed, and this is what the house design looks like. It looks nice, khulla khulla, but the khulla khulla is not because he wanted it. The khulla khulla is because this much, you know, from the 100% plot, 33% went away first in margins, right? Then we had to leave some common open plot, so there was another 11% gone. We tried to overlap as much as possible, right? Then an approach road had to be given, and we overlapped it with the margin, so we managed to get 4% more. Then some space has to be left between open. Now, after you leave all of this, some parking space had to be provided. So total of 61% of the land was not usable. No wonder people are unwilling to give up land for streets and parks, because inside their property you are not allowing them to use the land. So eventually only 32% could be built upon. This is why the building cover is low in our cities. Okay? In an apartment building, you will see the same sort of story, 28, 7, 3, 6, 26, 70% of the land rendered unusable more or less, and 21% in this large building also, similar sort of story, so that finally you can have only 34% that's building cover. Now, I'm not saying all of this is a waste, but I think that there has to be a better way of doing this. One way or the other, this is not working. Okay? Now, what architects have become like lawyers. They have to read these complicated building bylaws, find some loopholes, try to exploit loopholes. Okay? You must know all these detailed regulations. Loopholes have to be found. Find some convoluted shape that will fit inside these loopholes and the bylaws. Our creativity is used entirely in managing regulations, not in actually designing buildings. This is completely nonsense. And this is a creation of Indian planning. It's got nothing to do with reality, because the world over, people make buildings, they have the same problem. They also they have fire problems, they also have light ventilation problem, they also have traffic problem. So why are we, they also have parking problem, right? So there's some music I hear from somewhere. So why are regulations the way they are? You know, because in the mid-20th century, when Indian urban planners started thinking about cities, they were inspired by company towns, they were inspired by silly designs like Chandigarh and other silly company towns that were built, capital cities that were built at that time. They were inspired by garden cities of England, also maybe notions of purity, etc. they required these practical concerns, but while addressing the practical concerns, they did not worry about how much waste they are causing. And the propensity of government to intrude in the private realm and tell people what to do in their private lives rather than sticking to the public realm. That's a real problem. And finally, they're getting you to waste your land. So that is quite amazing that Indian government doesn't bother. As long as you are wasting money, the government does not matter. The impacts of this misallocation, we don't have enough land for streets. Because you're not allowed to use, so people say, I'm not going to give you land for streets. No parks, public parks, inadequate building cover, and therefore unattractive cities, not compact cities, etc. Can something be done to improve this? Of course it can be done. We have a rule. We never criticize something unless we have an answer for how to improve it. And improve it in a way that makes sense from all points of view, not just one point of view. To be able to answer every question that somebody might ask. So I can't give you a full presentation of that. All of this is complicated. But we say that individually trying to make these rules efficient is never going to work. Every time you tell somebody, this is a rule, for example, why do we ask for common open space? They say, pata nahi hai, but purane time se aata hai ye rule. Like we say for everything, ancestors have decided. Instead of throwing away things that don't make sense, we say because ancestors have decided, there must be something sensible in it. No. If you can't see the sense in it, change it. The ancestors may have done it for their time. We have to do it for our time. And we have to follow reason and rationale in doing this. So instead of trying to repair this book, we say, puri system nikal do, bring in a new system. It's a very simple system. We must, instead of writing rules on a drawing, draw what land has to be left open. Just that, nothing else. Okay? As soon as you do that, so if you were in an already built up area and you wanted to write building regulations in a different way, how would you do it? Okay. So I take Ahmedabad again, and I take this area in the middle of Ahmedabad, which we did a plan for. This is already a built up area. Okay. And in this built up area, you can see here, that's the area. We made a plan for this area and for the densification of this area. So we had to, you can see there's very little land in streets and there's very little land in parks. So we wanted to, parks we can't create, but streets we wanted to improve simultaneously. So we took that, and we zoom into this area. You come up here, you can see that Mill Owner Association building, so it's that center of Ahmedabad where this is. So we drew up lines like this. So you get more streets. First you demarcate the streets here, then you put this in here, then you demarcate the setbacks. Once the setbacks, this is the coverage that people get after the setback. Now this coverage you are allowed to fill up the full thing, no, nothing else, because I've taken away, you can see, I've taken away people's land for streets. I've taken a lot of the front margin away. Wherever there is a neighboring property, I've asked for a setback. The rest of the places I've asked for no setback. In addition to that, I don't want any other thing. So this is the coverage. Then we define a height. This is the envelope. This is the volume within which you have to design. This is the amount of FSI you are allowed. Now nobody builds a building like this because you cannot build many floors of this large size. On the ground floor, you might have full floors, but as you go up, you get towers. So that's, and everybody will design buildings like this, and eventually this will become this. Now, actually, the bylaws book will be on one side a set of drawings. Every plot has been drawn up, so you know exactly. Nobody has to now calculate. There's no text rules regarding margin, setback. There will be some text rules regarding standards, many other things. You will need a rule book. But uh, 1/3 of the rule book that deals with the shape and size of buildings is thrown out, and you have instead a set of drawings. Okay. If you were in greenfield areas, this would become even easier. We had this chance when we were working in Mumbai. This is the port of Mumbai. The port is now not used, so that land has to be plotted and redeveloped. So in this area, we made a street network of this sort. Then these were the blocks, 100 meter by 100 meter blocks, in which these were the plots that were plotted. And in this, we said these are the setbacks. You can see that's clearly drawn up. Once a setback is drawn, you say this is the envelope, the building volume within which you can build. So the envelope is already fixed. This is the amount of floor space everybody can build in this area. If they were to stack it up, it would look like this. Actually, people will make a variety of buildings of this sort. So all that finding of loopholes and understanding textual rules, etc., none of this has to be done. And that would be a possible outcome. Once again, you can see on the left-hand side. Now, I'm crunching a lot of things into this one, but I think at least the architects will understand very clearly what I'm trying to say here. That's that. Thank you very much. Now, I hope you have some questions.
Can we have the first question from Mr. Mahib?
हेलो सर, माय नेम इज़ देवेंद्र। सर मेरा सवाल ये था कि सर का जैसा आपने काशी विश्वनाथ का भी बनाया, आपने पार्लियामेंट भी डिज़ाइन किया है सर, जब कभी आप इस तरह के डिज़ाइंस आप प्लान करते हैं, कितने मतलब प्लान्स आप उसमें, क्योंकि ड्राफ्टिंग जब होती होगी तो एक नहीं, दो नहीं, चार नहीं, ऐसे कितनी ड्राफ्टिंग के बाद फाइनल डिज़ाइन आप तैयार करते हैं?
देखो, there is no straight answer to this. Sometimes, I told you of iterative process of coming up with a solution, then it is criticized, that's all I can call it, by everybody, people in the office, and then the clients, other agencies, outside people, and then we keep coming up with new ones. By the, it could be sometimes 20, 25, 30. Then maybe there are small changes. Actually, a set of drawings gets finished only when the building is finally finished. Okay. So there is no real answer to this. Sometimes that process happens in a, rapid, fast. Sometimes it takes a lot of time to come up with a design. So it's an open-ended thing. You cannot have there is no software program you can write for it.
Next question, please. Anyone?
Thank you.
Yes, there's a hand raised over there.
Good afternoon, sir. So basically my question was regarding all the excavations which were done during the construction of Kashi Vishwanath corridor. So how do all the debris and all the things like the cut and fills were done? So how was what was the solution for that debris and all that is produced? Like mostly I see in the current scenarios, after the construction process has been done, they just go away and they throw it somewhere outside the city and that just accumulates. So how was it compensated?
The right answer for this, I'm not 100% sure how it was done. In the Central Vista project, the debris removal and reuse of the debris by crushing it and reusing it in various ways has been mandated. But in the Kashi Vishwanath project, I'm not entirely certain. So perhaps it just went and got dumped somewhere. I don't really know. Sorry about that.
Next question from Professor Ajay Khare, sir.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. Sir, I visited Varanasi for Varanasi Architects Association annual function, and they invited us, and I presented my work of conservation of City Palace complex, but then nobody was interested in my work. Everybody was trying to ask that, what do you say about Kashi Vishwanath corridor? And their main concern, and which I could vehemently and very strongly defend, that such projects are definitely needed. I was told that you have also visited once before my visit, and then you have, but in Varanasi Architects Association people, they were worried that whether these kind of projects are viable economically. And I would say, request that you please throw some light on that. This is one question, and another I would say, in the second presentation, sir, I have been involved with form-based codes presentation. Do you think that these are the same form-based codes which are now adopted by NIUA?
Okay. I'll start with the Kashi one. Yeah. Well, you see, basically the Kashi project was addressing a lot of functional requirements there. Many of our places of worship have become very, very difficult places to manage, because large numbers of people go there. Earlier there were not that many people. The access to those places is very constrained. Security is a concern, safety is a concern. There is, in fact, they are so stressed that a spiritual experience is difficult to have in those places. In fact, the first person to wonder why the Kashi Vishwanath project, Kashi Vishwanath precinct should not be improved was Gandhiji himself. After coming in 1915, I think in 16, there's a very famous speech of Gandhiji at the Banaras Hindu University, which you can Google and find, where he laments the fact that our temples are in such horrible state and nothing is being, if we cannot improve our temples, what are we going to improve? So in that sense, it's a practically an absolutely required thing. Somehow or the other, you have to solve the practical problems around these areas. How it is done, what is done can all be questioned, but whether such projects are needed or not, I don't think that there is any question. There are large numbers of people going, you need these places to be improved, and practical problems have to be solved. A question can be about how to do them, not about whether to do them. You will need these projects. And if you see 19th century or earlier, 16th, 17th century, Europe, the Vatican was not what it is today. That too was improved because lots of pilgrims were coming and they needed a church that they could manage so many pilgrims in. So that is one thing. With regard to the form-based codes, form-based codes is an idea that an American architect has developed where he means a lot more than just defining the volume of the building. Okay? So I prefer to call this volumetric bylaws rather than form-based bylaws, because the form-based bylaws automatically gets mixed up saying you're trying to control the form. Well, to some extent you are, but not entirely. So that's the answer to it.
Any more questions, please? Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, my question is that in a country like India, where verandas and angans are a part of our culture, so also like these spaces which go beyond the building, these spaces build the gradient of public to private zones. So how to maintain that gradient as well as optimize the land we have?
Okay, 2 or 3 things. I don't think, first of all, culture is not something, yes, you're right, that many of our traditional buildings have verandas, courtyards, etc. I said that earlier. Many traditional buildings made sense in the traditional context. Now, we live in larger cities. We don't live in small towns. We have a different lifestyle. Lots of people need to live there. And so perhaps because of these practical requirements, the culture will evolve. Trying to keep any culture frozen and not responding to new needs is a recipe for problems. Having said that, let me say that it should not be, the preservation of this culture should not be the problem of planning. Right? If a person wants to, my volumetric bylaws idea, if that person wants to spend his land and leave open space, nobody stops him. It's the forced waste of land is what I am arguing against. Okay? Now, if you are in the middle of Mumbai and it's extremely expensive land, and if you decide that you just want to preserve a traditional bungalow that is there, all power to you. Why should anybody stop you from? But I should not force you to have a bungalow in the middle of Mumbai as a planner. It's not government's business to do that. Okay? So that's the simple answer to it. And I'd say that if you did not artificially preserve it, you will find that culture will evolve. And it will evolve in ways that make sense for that particular context.
Yeah, next question. Anyone?
Good afternoon, sir. My question was, since HCP is one of the very few firms in India that is currently executing projects at such a large scale, when you consider Kashi Vishwanath, Central Vista, and multiple such urbanism projects that you do. So how do you start visualizing such projects at such great magnitude when you know that there's going to be so much of collaboration that is going to be required, which could even redefine the design at some point?
Well, I don't quite understand the question. Could you just repeat? Yeah.
I mean to ask, what is the starting point that you consider
But the
when
starting point is always an idea in somebody's head, in one person's head. So, you start and you say, Acha, you want to do something here? Let's get that Google image. You put it there. You put a tracing paper on top. Because we have no other method of doing it, right? So put a tracing paper on top, and somebody sketches and says, yeah, maybe you do something like that. Always comes out of one person's head. Immediately thereafter, either that person himself or herself will start criticizing and say, no, let's throw it away and put it in the waste paper. If you're a small office, you're doing it by yourself. If you're a student, you're doing it by yourself. You drop something, then you automatically realize what mistakes there are in that. You crunch up the paper and throw it away. Okay? Now, you start with a fresh tracing, or perhaps you put a tracing on top of that older one and draw a new one. Okay? And so you are doing that process in your own head. You are drawing, criticizing, drawing again, criticizing. If you aren't doing it, do it, because that's the only way to design. You can't come up with a final answer on day one. So you do that yourself. In a larger office, this happens, it has to happen in somebody's head. One person has to come up with an idea. Well, very quickly, a whole bunch of people stand around and this is the fault with it, and this is. And then the circle becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. Obvious problems have been sorted out in the beginning. Now you are looking at some small portion. Sometimes you have to go back. You find a very big problem that requires to go back all the way. So a big design project is about learning how to get this collaboration in place, not being so possessive about your design, finding a respectful way of criticizing something that has been put up, allowing that criticism to happen. Okay? If you have an office in which the old man is seen as a complete guru and everybody is saying, sir, 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 finished. That office will never be a creative office. That office has to be an office in which the smallest person on the table should be able to point out and say, yeah, but that, if you did it like that, it would be better. Or that here there is a fault. Okay? Here there is a fault. So if anything we have learned at HCP, it is how to manage this design process, bringing ever more people onto the table, asking, going back, asking, going back, asking, going back, and to do this in a productive way, to do it fast, to do it in a productive way, and not turn this into some ashram where you have a guru who is sitting there on top telling everybody, and everybody treating him like a god, saying, you are Bhagwan architect. Nothing of that sort. Everybody has to pitch in. And managing that culture, creating a tradition of criticism inside the office, a possibility of people working together, and very quickly people start learning, and this whole process is immensely productive. So when people tell me, yes, what tends to happen mostly in architecture firms, small firms, especially when there is a turnover at the lower level, the top person has got a lot of experience. Everybody defers to that experience. Yeah, perhaps what he's saying is right. And then you don't have an opportunity to actually criticize and discuss anything. That's the traditional culture. Okay? So you want to get past that into a culture which is far more collaborative, far more critical, far more open-ended. Okay? And that's what a large firm is about. Now, Indian firms will have to learn how to do that. There are many. We are not the only people who do this type of work. Lots of people do that work. In the West, that culture has become a part of all the firms. So we have to get rid of our Eastern respect for all the elders and respectfully disagree with them. Learn how to respectfully disagree. And the elders have to learn how to seek that disagreement rather than saying, not now, later, do as I tell you. That never helps. Okay? So if you are able to overcome that, you can run an office which is where people are quickly growing, learning, and doing work that is, otherwise to do that sort of project, in 3 years, it's not possible. Not possible if there is not large number of people who, but always, we still don't have a computer. Everybody cannot come together, or we don't have an automatic computer that comes up with the ideas. The ideas come out of people's heads. And so we discuss, then somebody else has to go back and draw it up once again, then again discuss, again draw it up again. So this is very important. That's where it comes from first. But the second part is equally important for it to be put up for criticism. Okay? So if you can do that, you have a great process. And it's also a lot more fun to work, I can tell you from experience. It's no fun to be a guru.
Thank you, sir.
I think maybe one last question by Professor Rachna Khare.
I don't mind if you have another question. So.
Sure, if we have.
But if you have, more difficult, the better. But if you don't have a question, then we'll stop.
Good afternoon, sir. We have recently been to, as Ajay shared, that we have recently been to Varanasi, and we went to the temple precincts also, and excellent work, of course. Lot of we could see the way it would have been done, because a lot of people were involved, and the way the whole all the passages, streets, and everything were made. And we read a lot also before we went. So personally, I wanted to experience it from the front side, and especially I heard about the ramps, and also I wanted to experience all those things. But unfortunately, sometimes when you are planning in such cities or for a temple, it becomes more like a police management exercise. So we went from that Manikarnika side, and then we went through the gate number 2, and then we were being good. The facilities were very good. We had food. We could use washrooms, which was unimaginable earlier when I went, some 15, 20 years back. So, but then we were being moved, and then we were, asked to, after Darshan also had a huge line, and then after that we moved out. So, sir, what do you say about this experience which, becomes when architects are conceiving something, they are thinking, this is how it should be, but whereas it becomes more like a management, police management. This happened with us in Ujjain also. We were doing, some exercises on Kumbh, and we realized that it is, police has a lot of role, and they direct people, they manage the crowd, and they are fine, absolutely right in their own way. So,
Okay. They are right only in their own way, not in every way. So let me just explain. We've never had, India as a country has never faced many of the problems that we face today. For example, one problem is how do you make, 50, 60 lakh people live together in one concert. Ahmedabad has 50, 60 lakh people, and they all live within 300 square kilometers, jam-packed together. Such a problem has never been faced by India before. Okay? It's a new problem. Take Bombay, even more. Yeah? There's a lot more people jam-packed together, living together, trying to make a life, working, producing things, having families, birthdays, celebrations. Imagine, this is not a problem that you will not, you can look up the Shastras, this, that, whatever you look, they've never been faced, this sort of problem. You think the answers to these questions of how to manage life in this way, we don't have. And we have to find those answers. Now those answers require a lot of things. If you want to jam-pack people like that and live, you need first of all an answer about what will our settlement look like. How will we build it? How will we manage it? What will the trains be like? What will be the management policies? What will be the institution that will manage it? What is a municipal corporation? What should be the different departments in a municipal corporation? What should be the different roles in that department? None of this you can look up in a textbook. None of this is something that you can find a ready-made answer in any ancient text. All of these answers we have to find. There's only one way of finding it. The same way that we find an answer for how to design a building. You try something, you criticize it, you try something else. Try something, criticize it, try something else. It's a massive problem-solving exercise that we are all in. At an abstract level, we are all trying to find an answer of how to organize society, how to organize institutions, how to lay out a building, how to manage a facility like a temple. And if you think that the Western world, the answers were given by God to them, you're mistaken. If you just look back 100 years, they were as much struggling with their cities as we are struggling today. And they had it worse. If you look at London 100 years ago, they used to have massive cholera outbreaks. And guess what? At that time, nobody knew that germs cause disease. They didn't even know where this thing is coming from. Okay? Slowly, they kept at it, kept finding solutions. Most importantly, they had a mechanism for throwing out solutions that don't work. And that mechanism is called the tradition of criticism. When something's not working, when the police management of this area is not working, somebody should be able to get up and say it's not working. Right? That criticism, and then the possibility of trying out new things. Okay? So, to me, I'm working in many cities, many projects, many places, and I see this grand drama unfolding. where we are trying to find ways in which to make our life better. I've been doing this in Ahmedabad for at least 30 years now. Okay? I've been going to the municipal corporation, working with municipal authorities. Let's have a river, we had a problem in the river in Ahmedabad. There was sewage going in, there was no public space, there were hutments. And we said, okay, let's try and do something about it. So we did a riverfront project. Did everything work out right? No. You find solutions, there will be problems. You create solutions, new problems will come up. But I can tell you we've got better and better and better. The municipal corporation that I used to go to 30 years ago had no capacity. If I look today, the municipal corporation has huge capacity. I understand that in Indore and Bhopal and places also tremendous amount of work is being done. The cities are better, they are being improved. So this is a huge journey. It took the West at least 200 years to fix their cities. We shouldn't be aiming for 200 years. We should try and make it better. But the only way we'll do it is if we have a tradition, like in a good design office, of coming up with solutions, allowing people to talk freely. You can't shut up. If you shut up people, that's gone. That's like in an architecture office where you have a guru and the guru knows everything. So then that office is not going to progress very far. Okay? So if you want our society to progress far, we have to have a situation in which we try solutions. We know full well that we might make mistakes. We know full well that those solutions will find. So I don't think that the management of the Vatican used to be as good in the past as it is today. By now they have great capacity to manage. Even our hospitals are being managed better. Even our hotels are being managed better. Our cities are being managed better. Kashi mein bhi seekh jayenge. I remember, yeah, but the management could be better. I think that's what you were saying. And let me give you an example. Very briefly. There was, when we were doing the riverfront project, the construction had just started. There was barely something in the riverbed. And Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation got a visit from a Singapore ex-Prime Minister. Now this ex-Prime Minister was not Lee Kuan Yew, the big guy, not his son, who is the present one, but the interim fellow, the acting Prime Minister. He had come on a trade delegation to Ahmedabad. So the commissioner took him to the river and said, we are doing this riverfront project, and I was the architect, so I was asked to explain, so we explained. Now this Singapore Prime Minister was very sharp, and he looks at it and he says, you're going to hold water here, so do you have any plan for how you'll keep the water clean in the lake? We have essentially, it's a lake, so how are you going to keep the water clean? So of course, the commissioner launched off into this, we are going to have fish that will eat up this, and we're going to aerate the water, and we're going to do this, etc., and it'll be clean. Good architects do like that, right? We just show drawings, etc., and we say, ta-da, it's going to be fantastic. Knowing full well that the Singapore Prime Minister, he has a slight smile on his face. He says, in Singapore we have a river that's much smaller than this one. It took us about 10 years to figure out how to keep the water clean. You will also figure out, don't worry. So we must remember, I think what we really need is for every generation to understand that these are problems. We have to work on them. All of us have to work on them, have the patience, doggedness to work on them and improve. And as soon as you do that, you have a country that's moving rather than a country that is stagnating, right? And by Jove, remember the keywords are coming up with ideas, trying them out, criticizing them, trying out new things. And if you think you're going to reach a time when there are no problems, forget it. There's always going to be problems. There have never been no problems in the past. There will never be no problems in the future. Human condition is about finding solutions and keeping on moving. This is really, and that's, I think, also a deeply Indian philosophy. So it's not as if it's not.
Yeah, I think my friend Rahul Tiwari is having the next one.
सर आपके इस बेहतरीन प्रेजेंटेशन के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर। सर मेरा आपसे एक सवाल ये है कि आपने अहमदाबाद के 1 किलोमीटर स्क्वायर के डेंसिफिकेशन वाले प्रोजेक्ट का उल्लेख प्रेजेंटेशन में किया। सर मैंने ये चीज़ रियलाइज़ की है थ्रू स्टडीज़ एंड रिव्यूज़ दैट सच डेंसिफिकेशन प्रोजेक्ट्स आर वेरी much acceptable and they are islands of success in the city core areas where the land prices are really high. And if we cannot counter the issue of urban sprawl, then thinking about such control measures in cities like in Indian cities will be a little tough. And don't you think that we should now start focusing on 3-dimensional master plans for Indian cities, which we are presently not?
I completely agree, and this is what we are talking about. You know, when master plans are done, they do bylaws, but we are saying master plans are done, you please do volumetric studies. So that, you see, the problem with these text-based rules and these 2-dimensional plans and text-based rules is that you can never simulate the final outcome. How the land will be used, you cannot make up, because everything depends on plot shape, size, location, this, that. So how the land finally will be used, you don't know. That is why the planners do a sleight of hand and they say residential, commercial, this, that. Oh, so actually they don't know how it's going to be used. Right? So I agree with you. Yes, we need 3D.
Concepts like TOD and all coming up. Now the white zones, the mixing of the land uses over the vertical in the building itself. There is no spatial distribution of the use.
Yes, agreed.
So we must
Actually, this mixed use zone is a very funny thing. पहले किसी ने बोला ही नहीं था कि segregate करो, आपने segregate किया. Now instead of throwing out the segregation, you say ठीक है अभी हम mixed use allow करेंगे, zone बनाएंगे. So actually, it's an answer to a problem created by another, but nonetheless.
We have been using these principles in our ancient planning principles for ages, but we are buying the same concept in a different word from the West easily now.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say ancient because we've never really had this sort of problems before. I'd be a little more careful in using the word ancient solutions because ancient solutions, you never had to put 1 million people together in one place. So the problems were very different. If the ancients had our problems, they'd perhaps come up with what we are solving today.
Yeah, I think the whole presentation deserves a standing ovation and a big round of applause, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I now request Amok sir to please accompany Bimal sir. And on stage, sir, please. For felicitation and presentations of mementos to the dignitaries, I request Architect Vibhash Srivastav, the IIA Bhopal Center Chairman, Architect Akshay Selukar, to please be on stage. And Viva Madam, please felicitate with a memento to Bimal Patel sir. And
Oh, this is very nice. Thank you very much.
And now I request Architect Akshay Selukar to please present a memento to Amok sir, please. Sir, please be on stage. Actually, the demand is that the dignitaries, along with the dignitaries and the IIA office bearers, the students are invited to have a photograph over here. So we need to adjust in front all the students and probably sir ke saath mein sare students plus the IIA office bearers, please. And of course, everyone else is going to be there above, please. Yeah.
Evening presentation, if you can share just
Yes.
they will adjust it accordingly before we do.
Pen drive पे जो है वो मैं दे दूँ नहीं वही same one. I'm going to do the same thing. You are going to have to suffer twice.
Sir, it is an honor. It is.
I think those who are not getting chance, we'll again click it with them also. जो लोग नहीं आ पा रहे हैं, don't get disheartened. We'll click them, click the next photo along with them as well. Yes, yes. Thank. Uh, yeah. I request architect Hemant Vishwakarma to please present the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to all of you who have contributed to making a successful event. Sir, first and foremost, we express our deepest thanks